Probably when I was about maybe 3 or 4. My parents took me to this amusement park and they had pony rides, and I sat on the horse and I just felt this amazing feeling.
None of my family is horsey. Like, we've grown up in the city our whole lives, like very much not farm people, not horse people. I just really connected with animals and always kind of loved driving by horses and seeing horses, and had my dad pull over and pet the horses and read books about horses. And my dad took me for a trail ride once, and it was kind of just, I was hooked. So honestly, my business is kind of it was a happy accident, in all honesty. Like, I never sat down and planned to have a business. I wanted to start a blog to kind of encourage a conversation about inclusivity in equestrian sports, because as you know, it's, as much as we've progressed a lot as a sport, it's still very, very much a sport where there's a lot of discrimination. There's a lot of gossip, there's a lot of cliquiness and exclusivity, as well as how just expensive it is, so it's not accessible to a lot of people. The business is really kind of an extension of me, so I've just added in all of my values as I go along. So from the inclusivity part, from a price point, and I'm part of the queer community, so I very much integrated that into my brand. I'm an environmentalist, so I've made sure from day one to keep all of my initiatives sustainable. All of the philosophy that I wanted to make part of the blog has become the building blocks of my business. So all about promotion of inclusivity by taking down that super high price point, because as you know, being in equestrian sports, anything marketed to equestrians is very, very expensive, and that is a barrier to entry to the sport. So when you have young individuals, or of any age, individuals wanting to get into a sport, and they're facing a challenge of just not being able to afford even entry-level items, it's not really creating a sport that's open to everyone. It's creating a sport that's open to people that can afford it.
I think overall, definitely money is a concern, because riding is not a cheap sport. And you need the helmet, you need the boots, and all the gear, and so you have to also have access to horses. And normally, if you live in the city, there aren't very many opportunities.
There are a lot of people who can probably afford to take lessons or ride casually parkboard, but may not have that money to show. And if they're feeling invalidated and not a good rider because they're not showing, they're not bringing home ribbons, they don't have show photos, it goes back to the sport being inaccessible. I think as a culture, it needs to change so that we accept riders that show, all the way to pleasure, all the way to just hanging out in the paddock with your horse. Like a lot of issues when it comes to barriers to entry, it's a systemic thing, and you kind of got to look back at the history of equestrian sports and just having horses for riding and not work. It was a thing of the rich, it was a thing of the wealthy, thing of royalty. Like, the royals had horses and played polo and all of that.
Traditionally, is considered a gentleman's sport, and you have to be a certain class to be able to ride.
And I think that kind of transcended into the fact that equestrian sports are still considered a more elite sport. It's not as common or casual as soccer or basketball, baseball. It's something that's a bit more exclusive.
When I was in Hong Kong, being very colonial, there are some people who are of British nationality. They don't tend to appreciate the fact that the other people of different nationality can also be good at riding. Sometimes you can feel that they sort of look down on them and say, "Oh, you're just the beginner and you're not very good at it." I remember one time I had some friends of mine, they work at the racetrack, and then they took me to watch a morning gallop exercising. And this is horse racing, thoroughbred racing. And I was talking to one of the trainer's wife, who actually happened to be Australian. And we were just chatting, and she didn't even realize I was Chinese. And she said, oh, those guys can't ride because they're Chinese. So she actually said that, which kind of startled me. And she actually, and that probably was the one, she wasn't directing it to me, but overall, that's how she saw Chinese riders. I think nowadays, in Canada anyway, the equestrian community are trying very hard to be more inclusive and to make the riding more accessible and more affordable for the general public.
There is an initiative called OYES Equestrian that I'm a mentor as part of. So they're an organization, a non-for-profit organization that focuses on supporting marginalized equestrians. So whether they're part of a racial or ethnic minority or socioeconomic minority, or they're part of the queer community, the organization is in place to support them either through scholarships and grants or through mentorship programs.
I think being with a horse and working with horses is a very satisfying, whether it's a hobby or an experience, because horses, you can see there, they are very kind animals. They are big, but they are very intuitive. They're very gentle, and to be able to connect with horses, I think it takes a lot of stress out of people in general.
From experiencing just the magic, like I use the word magic because I think horses are nothing short of magical. I don't think it should be something that's restricted to only people that can afford it. It really, at the end of the day, comes down to what we all have in common as equestrians is that we love the horse. Mm-hmm. Like, we're all in it for the horse. And if you strip everything down to the bare bones, that's where it is, right? Whether you're competing or whether you're just grooming your horse, you're there. We're all united in our love for the horse. Exactly. Yeah.